Innocent ones, too.
March 1915. Nikolai Myaskovsky was one of the Russians preparing for the final assault.
Instead of the total shootout we expected, there were only a few shots of shrapnel, and then we reached the fort quite easily.
The Austro-Hungarian garrison had fallen apart. Przemysl surrendered to the Russians without a fight. The first Russian train crosses the River San. British observer Bernard Pears quickly realized how divided the Austro-Hungarians were.
The troops, instead of being all Hungarians, were of various nationalities. The conditions of defense led to brawls and, in the end, open disobedience of orders.
Austro-Hungarian prisoners were paraded through Moscow. A German official said, referring to Austria-Hungary, that his country was now shackled to a corpse. Russians bury the German dead after yet another battle. While great armies tore at one another's throats on the Eastern Front, a circle of small nations watched, like vultures, waiting to see which side to join. Forget liberal ideals and high principles. The question was, who would offer them the most, and who would win this war? These smaller nations, Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, also had scores to settle, lands they wanted back. The price of any alliance would be high. Marie, Queen of Romania, at her post-war coronation. British-born as Princess of Edinburgh, Marie had effectively led Romania as Britain's loyal ally in the First World War. She kneels before her husband, King Ferdinand. But behind closed doors, Marie called the shots. She was instrumental in brokering the critical deal. Marie had written to the Russian Tsar, Cousin Nicky, and to the British King, Cousin George, putting Romania's entry in the First World War out to tender.
Being neutral, I get news from all sides. Each tries to persuade us that defeat for them is impossible. Promises and threats being dangled over our heads.
The Romanian government, prodded by Marie, fixed the price for entry on the Allied side: Transylvania, the Banat, and Bukovina. She added for George V's benefit,
These geographical explanations must be Chinese to you, but the places can be found on a map.
Her Prussian-born husband Ferdinand rather fancied joining Germany, but by August 1916, the Allies agreed Romania's terms in full. In Rome, Italy's leaders had already cashed in. Instead of joining the Central Powers, in line with pre-war treaties, Italy initially declared neutrality. But in October 1914, Prime Minister Salandra said Italy must act for her own national good. He called this policy sacro egoismo, sacred self-interest. In practice, it meant joining the side of the highest bidder. Few Italians wanted to fight. But the Allies offered a chunk of Austria-Hungary, part of the Dalmatian coast, and threw in a few islands. So without consulting Parliament, Salandra accepted, landing his people with one of the harshest fronts in the entire war. Italy's border with Austria-Hungary zigzagged for 375 miles into Europe's highest peaks. The Austro-Hungarians had the advantage, holding the high ground along the entire front. It was brutal terrain. Italian Alpine troops inch up to the front line. An officer beats out a rhythm for men hauling a field gun up the slope. In May 1915, Italian troops seized the mountain village of Cortina d'Ampezzo. In front of them, the vast Lagazzuoi mountain. By sunrise, the Italians had climbed its sheer rock face to a narrow ledge. They were now fighting a vertical war. Above them, the Austro-Hungarians had fewer men, but showed a tenacity they lacked elsewhere. Austrian Colonel Victor Schemfil watched his men attack the Italians below.
They threw several hand grenades on the ridge, which was about 100 meters below them. Judging by the screams of the wounded, and from the fact that the machine gun hasn't fired a single shot all day, we must have been successful.
But the Italians clung on, 2 miles above sea level. Each side burrowed into the mountains and spent the next 2 years trying to dislodge the other. "15 men slept in this cave carved out of the rock. Both sides worked 24-hour shifts, digging tunnels, trying to reach the enemy's position and blast the mountain under them. Some went mad listening for the sound of enemy drills.
My nerves are shot to pieces. I've got to calm down. I've now been in the front line 4 months, amid constant fear and torment.
Avalanches became another hazard of war, sometimes triggered by shell fire. Austrian Eugenio Mich was caught in one that wiped out 9 barrack huts, killing 272.
I stayed squashed under the debris of the beds. For the first quarter of an hour, I could feel 50 or so men moving around me, and then one by one they fell silent and died.
Italy's frontier with Austria-Hungary leveled out along the Isonzo River. Italy's first attack failed with heavy loss of life. But General Luigi Cadorna bloody-mindedly ordered another and another. 11 battles in all, at a cost of 300,000 lives. They never reached their main objective, the port of Trieste. Giuseppe Cordano served in the Julian Alps, in a trench system just 15 meters below the Austrian positions.
Between the two trenches, it's a cataclysm. The dead are scattered everywhere, half buried. Haversacks, rifles, rags of clothing, and human body parts. A couple of grenades fall in the middle of the dike where some soldiers are sheltering, and everything is thrown up in the air. Rocks fly and fall with furious destruction. Laments and screams for help can be heard from everywhere, but how can one move? How can one help them?
I'm astride the crest, and I carry on, metre by metre, ducking my head under shrapnel fire. 10 meters in front of me, Zanni from Vicenza is hit in the head, screams, and falls down the precipice. I watch his body tumbling down. He was a good lad. I keep going, forever asking myself when my time will come.
In the winter of 1914, Germany's High Command told the Kaiser they'd decided to launch the major offensive of 1915 against the Russians. The generals ruled out total victory, but a decisive blow might force the Russians to sue for peace. Germany moved 8 divisions from the Western Front to the eastern, to try to break through the Russians at Gorlitza, in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. Now German fought alongside Austrian. Austrian Matthias Migschitz sensed the change of mood.